Okay, hello and welcome to this session. Marna, we're really happy to have you. The stage is all yours now.
Okay, thanks, Anna. And thanks everybody for attending on this last day of GSE UK. I wish I could be there in person, of course, but you know, I think we've got a very fun session for the last day as well. This is a really kind of a cool session that I've always liked talking about. And also I noticed that the title was probably the longest one that we've ever had in GSE history, but hopefully it can give you an idea of what we're going to talk about. So my name is Marna Wally, and I work in the zOS installation upgrade. I work on system programmer type of activities within development, and I also get a chance to look at some of the really cool stuff that we do for system programmers that don't get enough advertising. And they're cool stuff that I like to use. I've used all of these items myself, and they're also older stuff. And I know a lot of people do not upgrade, do not migrate to the absolute current release. I know that happens in real life. So I really wanted to have this session talk about old stuff, small stuff, system programmer stuff that you might have missed and that is available on your system today, okay? So my email is on the cover, you can see here if you have any questions. Also, if you have any ideas about little small stuff that you think is really cool that I might have missed or others, give me a holler because I really like to include different items in this presentation. All right, so I'm going to go back all the way to zOS 2.2 and even to 2.1 and talk about some stuff. Now, let me explain this chart here. So I have some 2.2 items and some 2.1 items to talk about. Some of them are underlined. The ones that are underlined, I think I'm going to have enough time to talk about within this session that's going on right now. The stuff that's not underlined, there's only 2 items. I left them in the hidden slides, which you can have in the proceedings that you upload and that I've uploaded and you can download, because I think those are also awesome little functions. I just didn't think I would have enough time to talk about it. Hopefully I can get to all of the underlined items that you see here. But also I wanted to bring your attention to a little blue forget-me-not here. I lost a very good friend within development, and these were items that he particularly wrote for us. He and I worked very closely together on these items, and they are very awesome items that I really wanted you to know about, because whenever I use these functions, I always think of my friend Uli, and he's not here anymore. So I wanted to put that on here. And I also wanted to advertise these items. He's not here anymore, but his legacy will live on because a lot of these functions that he wrote are good. And I'm thinking about him right now. So let me continue on. All right. So let's go to where I pick all this stuff out of. I pull this all out of some of the education modules that we've had, and you may not even know this exists. So I did want to give some advertisement to it. On the IBM zOS GitHub location, there's something called zOS install, education, and it's all underneath this education folder. And you can see it's broken out by releases here. This is where you will find a lot of nice, sweet little PDF files that will talk about an entire function that was put in for that release from soup to nuts. And so that's where I really go shopping for some of these items, and I try to get some of these items uploaded here as well so that we can share them. So there's a whole lot of stuff I'm not going to be able to talk about. If you go to this location, I've noticed a lot of people don't even know this exists. If you want to go out to this location and look at old stuff, this is a great place to go. All right, so let's continue on with our 2.2 items. This little icon that I use here, these 3 little smiling faces, I use that to indicate that this would be something that would be interesting for sysprog and our users. So you might want to, as a system programmer, go back and share this with your users because I think this is awesome stuff. And then the little guy with the mortarboard, that's something that I think probably is more just specific for system programmers. So I do want to mention that and try to help you share this information with your user community. All right, so let's go back in time now. This is an interesting item here. And I pulled this up out of the archives because I continually want to talk about this, and there's something new in this area. So first of all, I want to start with a recap and explain what's going on here, because I can't tell you what the change is unless we get back into what happened in the first place. So way back in zOS 2.2, we instituted something that we have called Gdge extended. So previously, the limit on what we're now calling classic Gdgs was that you could have 255 generations. Okay, that was because we had a 1-byte catalog field, which was called Gdg limit. That 1-byte catalog field would only allow us to hold 255 generations. Therefore, that's what limited in our classic Gdg scenario that we had. But now in 2.2, we have something called Gdg extended. Okay, and that's really great because now with these extended Gdgs, we can have up to 999 generations. We're going to put the number of generations that we have in a 2-byte catalog field now that's called Gdg limit E. It's got an E at the end, and that will give us up to 999. And this is great because, you know, a lot of people said they just wanted to have a new generation for every day of the year. And now, well, they had 255, that is a lot less than 365 days in a year. And so now with 999, we can have even more than 2 days worth of those generations, 2 years worth of generations if you'd like. All right, so how do you use Gdg extended? Basically 3 steps. You got to position for it because there's some incompatibilities that you're going to want to take advantage of and fix if you have any problems on. You need to make sure you enable the capability because Gdges are not by default enabled. The reason why we disabled them is because of number 1 is that you might need a position for it. So you're going to want a little control over that. And then number 3 is the absolute easiest way is just define it and start using it. Okay, so a little bit of an old history here. Back in 2.2, you couldn't use a Gdg from a system that was pre-2.2. Everybody's beyond 2.2, I hope, today. And also Pdses can be Gdgs and Gdges. Okay, so a little bit about that. Just a word about positioning. So the reason why we turned this off by default is because there were some incompatibilities. Mainly it has to do with the Gdg limit 1-byte field versus the Gdg limit E, which is the 2-byte field. So if you have any applications that are looking at the Gdg limit, they need to now understand, they need to look at the new field, which is the 2-byte Gdg limit E field. Okay, so that's basically what the positioning is if you have any of these applications that need to change. How do you know if you have applications that don't need to change? Well, you can use the lovely component generic tracker, which my friend Uli provided for us. I want you to use generic tracker in order to help with this identification. You turn it on, you look for instances where you have programs that are accessing the Gdg limit field and not using Gdg limit E field. When you turn on the generic tracker, you can look at the instances. The instances that you see will start with IBM DFSMS, and they will start with Gdg limit. And these are the instances of the programs that you might have to change if you want to have them identify and be able to use, you know, extended Gdgs. All right, so the next thing is, once you've got that all cleaned up, let's turn on the capability. How do you turn it on? Go to IGGcat parm lib member, Gdg extended, set it to yes. And then you can check, if you wanted to restart it, you could do an fcatalog restart, and that would, you know, pick up the new setting that you've just turned on. You can do an fcatalog report, and you can see here that under enabled features, if you've got this set up right, you'll see that Gdg extended is an enabled feature. All right, so you got all that done. Application's all positioned for it. Everyone's looking at the right 2-byte field now. You've got it turned on. The catalog knows it's going to start using it. Now let's just use it, and this is the easiest thing in the world. In midcams, you just do a define of your Gdg. You put the keyword extended here. We have to have the keyword extended, or else it's not going to be extended. And then you say what limit you want. You can put something over 255. Here's an example of 365. Probably people are just going to put 999 because why not have as many as you want? That's your choice. But I just wanted to show an example here that gets us above 255. Okay, so that's the way things were for a very long time. And now I'm getting to the new information. So for a long time, people said, great, you know, I've got these old Gdgs and I want to now make them Gdg extended. Give me a way to convert them. And people wanted a single step to do that. And there is no single step to do that. And indeed, we have looked at it and we will not provide a single step to do it. There are some various risks and some other problems that we would have during this conversion, which makes a one-step conversion really not possible. We're not going to deliver it in a one-step, convert command or something like that. So we've had some things that we've done in order to do conversions from Gdg to Gdge. This is where the new info comes in. So when we first had Gdg extended, Gdges, I looked at this problem and I said, okay, I'm going to figure out a way to do this. So in what I'm calling Marna's original method, I created a 6-step job and I used idcamp alters in it, and I created some temporary Gdgs. But my original method would only work on SMS managed Gdgs. If they happen to have been migrated, that was okay, but they were going to have to be recalled. Ooh, yuck. And it couldn't handle tape data sets. So I'm going to tell you and admit to you, my original method was not good. Okay, I didn't like it at all, but it was a method that I had come up with. And I had some use cases where they were SMS managed, they were not migrated, they weren't tape data sets. And with that consideration, it worked all right. So then my buddy Steve Branch, I call him Mr. Catalog. A lot of people call him Mr. Catalog. He's the guy that gave us Gdge, and the one that also has indicated that he's not going to be able to do it in a single step conversions. He said, okay, Marna, I got a better way of handling this, and it's still going to be 6 steps, right? And I'm going to use TSO renames instead of the idcamp alters kind of solution that I had come up with. So Steve's solution handled non-SMS Gdg, so his was definitely improvement over mine. Couldn't handle tape data sets still, and also the data sets had to be recalled. So Steve improved my idea, a little bit in that he could handle non-SMS. But, we still both had the strike against us that we couldn't handle tape data sets, and the data sets would be recalled. Okay, so I blogged about number 1 and number 2. If anybody cares about my blog, I blog about that. But number 3 is really the new info and the stuff I want to share with you today. So working on a lot of this and thinking about it more, we had a really smart customer that came to us and said, I got an idea. I want to use a repro merge cat. Okay, and I can get it down to fewer steps than you guys could. And so we said, great, what's your idea? He gave us the steps. And I'll show you in a second. Steve Branch actually coded it up and ran some regression on his catalog test cases, and it worked great. But his idea will work with SMS and non-SMS Gdgs. It will work with tape data sets, and it does not recall the data sets if they had been migrated. So this is like the best thing we could have, okay? It's still going to be a multi-step job, okay? Because like I said, we're never going to get a single step job, but it runs pretty quickly, and Steve and I were really happy with this customer's idea. So here it is. Here's the new information. Okay, and I cut and pasted this from the job that Steve Branch used to do his regression testing. I actually did some regression testing of my own. That's how come I'm confident in sharing it with you. So it's a 4-step procedure here. First of all, they're all relatively easy steps here. You define a temporary user cat. Okay, so you can see the syntax there on the first line. Then what you do is you repro those classic Gdgs into the temporary user cat. Okay, and this means that the data sets aren't going to be recalled and they're going to be removed from the original UCAT. Because remember, the original UCAT is where we're going to want to have the Gdges. So you can see the repro syntax there on number 2. Number 3, define the Gdges, with the name that you wanted, the same name, in the original catalog. So this is where the final destination I need them to go. And here you can see on the define command, I have the word extended, and I have a nice big limit of 999 there. So we're good to go. These are all very simple steps so far. Another 4-step, I just want to point you to, the syntax has to be very carefully like that, in that the entries has to have a .wildcard at the end for the entries. So on the 4th and last step, you're going to move the selected Gdgs from the temporary catalog into the original catalog. And this is where the data sets are not going to be recalled. And the Gdg name itself is going to remain in the temporary catalog. So you can see that the repro statement here that you need to use, and see how I said entries, it's your Gdgs, and then you have your asterisk there, and they move then back into the original catalog. So this 4-step process, Steve and I are super happy with, and we thank the customer very much for coming up with this idea. Great stuff, nice how we crowdsourced a solution here. But I did want to show you this because I know that there's a lot of people out there that probably want to convert Gdgs to Gdges, and this is now the best gold standard that we have to do that. New news. All right, so let's move on. So speaking of catalogs, another thing I found out in 2.2, actually this is with a somewhat more recent PTF that was available in March of 2019. As you know, AutoMount is able to allocate a new file system if you want. However, we had the problem that sometimes the allocation of the new file system would catalog it into the master catalog. People did not like that. And they didn't want, they wanted Unix to enforce that if they didn't want it in the master catalog, that Unix could not catalog it in the master catalog. And this comes into play when people, of course, and I do this a lot, is I want all of my file systems in a user catalog. And it really is nice that Unix can help enforce that for me. So how do you do that on AutoMount? So on AutoMount in the map name file, it's very simple. You just put the little keyword here, ucat, on the alloc any or alloc user, and that will allow Unix to enforce that the catalog, or sorry, the file system that it is going to newly allocate will be put into a user catalog. That means that you need to have the alias in the master to get to the user catalog, or it's going to fail. And this is only for ZFSs, not HFSs. But as everybody knows, HFSs are going away in the next release. So you should already be all on ZFS already and have no HFSs. Okay, so this is a nice little enhancement. I really like this because I don't want to accidentally find that a file system was put into my master catalog. Not good, causes me more work later that I have to move it out of the master catalog, put it in a user catalog. So I like this little function. So while we are in the map name file for AutoMount, I found another little nicey thing that was also done here. And this was not even advertised. I didn't even know it was there until I happened to have stumbled upon it. Sometimes the map name file, you may have a very, very, very long string, perhaps a file system name that gets very long. And so what we have the ability now is to have multiple lines being able to be coded in the map name with a continuation character. So what it will do is if you put a continuation character into map name, everything after the slash will be ignored, and then it will go down to the next line, and then it'll start reading again. And you can have multiple of these continuation lines as you see here. But just do remember, anything before the backslash is not ignored. So in this particular example, if I wanted to say something like omvs.hfs. And then I'd have to put a slash immediately after it, because if I put a blank slash, the blank would be considered a character. It would go into the file system name, and there you go. That's not a valid file system name, right? With a blank in the middle of it there. So just be careful that you don't, put the backslashes too far out. You got to really pay attention to where you put them. And then notice here it goes on to the next line, first column, here's user, another slash, and then it continues first column back on the next line. You can see here. Nice little thing. I liked this because I can have my names nicely readable if I needed to do continuation. Okay, next thing is for Pdses and DFSMFs, and this is about pending delete for Pdse members. So if you if you remove or you update a Pdse member, it won't immediately be removed because there's going to be connections to that Pdse member. And the use case I was thinking here is that if you have a Pdse that is LLA managed, and you might be changing the content of that, you'll have a lot of connections to those old members that you had in there. And the connections will be there all the time. So that's where these pending deletes might accumulate up a lot. Okay, so what this might result in is the Pdse space is not being reused as much as it could be. And you may think this is very fine for a long time. I don't know how long your system's going to be up, hopefully a very long time. And Pdses can have lots of secondaries extents, and you may not ever run out of room in a Pdse, but over time this is going to accumulate. It might be thinking that you want to go and just start doing a clean out and get those pending deletes out of there. So this is how you can do the pending deletes. So really there's two ways you can do it. One of them is a batch method, and I'll show you that with the IEB Pdse program, and it's called perform pending delete within that batch program, that utility that we've had for a while. And the other way is you can do it automatically. If you want to do it automatically, it's in the IGDSMS ParmLive member, and the statement is Pdse pending delete interval. Okay, now in the ParmLive member, the default for the Pdse pending delete interval to clean out all those pending deletes is 0, meaning it's not going to use it. So that's why really I'm talking about it, because this is something that's not turned on by default. You have to turn it on. So the number that you put in there, n, under Pdse pending delete interval, will be the time in minutes. Now, what does that mean? What is the interval? What is it going to do? Well, it's then going to look at two other parameters that we have in IGDSMS, which is the least recently used cycles and the least recently used time. And so cycles times time is going to give us the amount of intervals that we have that we're going to do the cleanup for. But let's look at those values now, the LRU cycles and LRU time. So LRU cycles is a value where the default is 15. So it means 15 cycles. How much is the least recently used time? Well, the value for that is 60, but note it's in seconds here. So I have 60 seconds, which is 1 minute. So if I, by default, want to turn this function on, and I'm going to use 15 for my LRU recycles, and I'm going to use 60 seconds or 1 minute for my LRU time, 15 times 60 is going to give me 900 seconds. 900 seconds is 15 minutes. That's the default you'll get for Pdse delete interval should you choose to use it and use the default for the cycles and the time. But what I'm trying to get at is that if you want to start using this cycle or this function, you'll have to get the Pdse pending delete interval higher than 0, because 0 is the default, meaning it's not turned on. And if you're going to use the default for the cycles and the time, which was 15 and 60 seconds respectively, you need to convert that into the minutes and get it above that interval time. So if you're going to use the default cycles and time, you need to put it above 15, or else it won't mean anything. Okay, so just take that into consideration. Don't mix up minutes and seconds, because the pending delete interval is in minutes and the LRU time is in seconds. So just make sure you get everything right there. Okay, so let me show you an example here. And I wanted to show you something that had connections to it. So I picked a Pdse that I have on my system, the MWAL8 LoadLive Pdse dataset. And I did a display to see what connections I had to it. And oh, there you go. I've got it LLA managed. Okay, got it. Okay, fine. So I'm going to show you how we did it with batch. So this is the little IEB Pdse batch utility that we've had for a really long time. I wanted to look at it. So I put my data set here, and it says, okay, I'm going to validate this, and look down here. This is what I'm looking for in the red. Pending deletes 7. So I've got 7 pending deletes happening here. So what I had done with this data set is I had a whole lot of members in it, and I did a whole lot of deletes on it in order to get this use case just kind of the way I wanted. So before I did the deletions, you can see here I had 99% utilized. I had 244 members. I had a lot of used pages in this Pdse. But after I did the delete, I can see I got my used pages down. But remember, I still have pending deletes here. So these numbers are going to be a little bit different than after I delete the pending deletes. I've got 1% used, and I've got 2 members in here. Okay, so that's what I'm seeing here, but I know I've got pending deletes there. So now let's go into my batch program, and this time I'm going to pass the perform pending delete on it, and I also use no analysis. And I get back from this, it says, okay, I had pending delete records processed. 0 pending delete members were deleted out of 7 that were possible. Why do I have that? Well, I better refresh LLA and get those connections to my members reconnected and again, and not have connections to the ones that aren't there anymore. So I did a modify LLA refresh, ran the exact same job again, and it says, yep, okay, I did 7 out of 7, all done. So now this lovely Pdse data set that I had has all my pending delete members done. If I go look at the size, I can see that I've got less used pages now. Okay, so that was my experience for using pending delete, especially when I had connections to those members that had been deleted from LLA. Next thing, I've answered this question a lot, okay? How do I look at or print my workflow? How do I share my workflow with somebody that's not on zOS MF? The answer is that we have a function in zOS MF to do that. A lot of people didn't know it. I've had questions about this. And so I did want to put this in there. So the use case is, I'm not a zOS MF user, my manager's not a zOS MF user, and I want to show them what I'm doing, or I want to search for something, or I want to print something that came in a zOS MF workflow. So the use case here I'm going to use is my very large zOS 2.4 upgrade workflow. It has many, many, many steps. And this is particularly useful if you have a really big workflow that you want to just get into a PDF or do a search on it. And the upgrade workflow is rather large and a little bit cumbersome for searching sometimes. So how do you do it? You create a workflow, you open it up, you filter any way you want. And again, filters are super powerful now. And this is how I can get it just down to what I want to look at or print or create a PDF out of. I go into actions, you do the export, and this is where people have missed that action, that item right there. They don't know that actions has the export capability. Fill in what you want. You want to print a table of contents, stuff like that, and then just print it. Now, my recommendation here is that you do the export after you've run any discovery steps, because that might also help you cut down on the size of the exported file. If you want the whole exported file, that's fine, go at it, but if sometimes people just want to see a little bit. So let me show you in the screenshots what I just described. So first of all, I created the workflow. I ran the first step, which is discovery. You can see here, most everybody's discovery step in a workflow is the first step. So I've run discovery, and look, even by running discovery, not doing much of anything, I've already completed 27% of the workflow, 54 steps out of 198, just by trying to use discovery and knocking those down that aren't applicable to me. Next thing you know, I'm going to go filter on the steps. So the thing I wanted to do, or I forgot to mention it, I want to just print the BCP steps, so the base steps that are assigned to MWally and that are ready to go. So on my filter, I built up my very powerful filter. I said the state is ready, so that means it wasn't skipped. It means it's a valid step that I need to execute. I wanted to only look at the steps that started with a number 4, because I can see here that all of the BCP upgrade items all start with number 4. That's just the kind of structure of the workflow. The BCP was the 4th parent step in the workflow. So I said, okay, I'm going to start it with number 4. And I only want to look at my steps. So the assignee has to contain MWally. I clicked on the filter button, and then here you can see here what it looked like. The state is ready. It starts with number 4, and there are my steps. So this way I can see all of the ready steps for the BCP that are mine. Okay, and there I go. They're there. I click on this little box up at the top here. This one is going to implicitly check everything on that entire list. I'm then going to go under actions, and then here is the hidden option that people can't find: export workflow as a printable format. That will give me this nice little window here. And so I can export all the steps or the filtered steps. Well, I just spent the time to do filtering. I'm going to want to print out just the filtered. If I want a table of contents, I can do that. And then here's where you get a lot of more information. Do you want to see all of the JCL that's going to be executed? Do you want to see all the recs? Do you want to see the shell scripts that are going to run? Well, I don't want to see all of that information, so I didn't check that. And I just clicked on OK. There you go. In a new browser tab, here's my new file. It's HTML, and then I can export that. I'll show you or print that in a second. But what I did want to show you here is, here's my workflow, but all of these are hot links. So here underneath the BCP, Everybody knows this one is creating the IPL text. If I click on this, because it's a hot link, it'll take me right down to the step within that same file. I get nice one flat file, table of contents at the top, jump all the way down to where I want to see. If I wanted to make it a PDF, people like to do that. You can do that. I do a right click print, or I could do a save as, however you do that on your own machine to get a PDF created. And that's how that will work. And then you can have a PDF of those steps. All right, so keep moving on. Let's talk about one that my buddy Uli gave us, and that was the ability to do a syntax check on the health check ParmLib member. Okay, so as you know, HCS PRM ParmLib member, it can get a little long and it has some heavy duty syntax in it. And I probably, like all of you, have gotten the syntax wrong always on the first time trying to get it not in there correctly, because it is kind of complicated. Okay, so now we have the ability to syntax check it before you actually try to use it, which is a great thing. How do you use it? Easiest way in the world. It's on the modify command. Okay, you put your HCS proc name, and then it's on the add, and then you say ParmLib equals, giving the ParmLib member you want to check. And then here is the whole key to doing the syntax checking. You have to say comma check, and it's only for the modify of the add ParmLib, not on the replace part. Okay, so remember, if you just want to check it, you just do a comma check here, and it won't add it, it'll just check it, which is good. So what you'll see, if it's okay, you'll see this first message here that no errors are found. If you're like me, I typo a lot of stuff. You'll probably get the second error where it's in red, where it says errors were found. And then the last thing you will always see, whether you see the green or the red message, you will always see this one in blue, which is the add ParmLib processing has been completed. Okay, now just first of all, when I started using this and I saw that add ParmLib processing has been completed, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't really want to add that. I just wanted to check it, but fear not. It just meant that add processing was completed, but the checking was the only part that was the add. So it didn't really do an add. It just did, a check of it. But that message is produced just so that you know that it's done. Okay, so don't be alarmed by that message like I was. Here's an example. I created a new ParmLib member and I had a lot of stuff in it. In fact, I was using something called the filtering, which is what I had to hide in this session right before this to get it down to an hour. And so what I did here is I did a lot of filtering in my HCS PRM ParmLib member, and man, oh man, my filtering was fun. I loved playing with it, but of course I got the syntax wrong a lot. And here you can see here I have some when statements that are all messed up. I don't know, that's what I kind of did. I'm showing you my errors here. And so when I went to go the first syntax check, you can see here, it'll tell you the line, it'll tell you the column, and it will tell you, a little bit about the problems with it. It's kind of messy at the beginning when I was trying to get my filtering all done and set up. So I'm just showing you here what it looks like when it was wrong, okay? And then you'll see, this is the bad message. It was completed and I found errors. And then here's that usual message, I don't get alarmed at, is that the add ParmLib processing was complete. That's okay, good. So I went back through there, I looked at all my errors, I fixed them all up, and then here's the message where I got it was complete. And again, add ParmLib processing was complete. All right, so let's move on to Swagger. I really like this function a lot. And this is the Swagger support that we've added into zOS MF. Okay, so what is Swagger? You might have heard people mention it before. Swagger is this open source framework that's meant to easily consume RESTful web services. Okay, that's the definition from Wiki. I prefer just to show you what it is because you can get a lot of knowledge just by seeing what it does and actually trying it out yourself. So as you know, zOS MF has a ton of REST APIs. Okay, and a lot of times programmers want to use those REST APIs, but they're not, they want to check it out ahead of time or maybe get the correct syntax down for it. So it's nice to want to kind of do a GUI to try out that API and hit the errors right away and see what the problem is before you're doing the program and then running it, which might be more overhead when you're just trying to design or develop something. So how do you use this? Well, the Swagger for zOS is going to be found by putting a /API/Explorer at the end of your regular zOS URL that you have that you log on to when you're coming in from a browser. And then you just try the API. But there's a couple of little tiny things you need to set up in order to be able to use this from your browser. There is, of course, a security resource profile that controls it. Imagine that, another profile for zOS control, and you can see what it is here. But once you get that set up and get your authenticated users and permitted to that profile, you really are going to be good to go. And it's just as simple as going to the web location and giving it an interactive tryout, which I'll show you here. So once I got that all set up and I was allowed to use it, I went to the URL, and this is what I saw. I saw a whole list of all the APIs that we have in zOS. Now, when I say all the APIs, I mean to say really all the APIs that we have Swagger enabled. Not every zOS REST API is available to use within Swagger. We know about it, we like it, we're trying to get there, but we've got a lot of them here today, probably all the ones that you're going to want to use right away. Okay, so not all of them are there. If your absolute favorite one is not there, hold on, we're working on this to getting them in there. But we've got a lot of the most common ones there now. So I'm looking through the list of REST APIs here, and here I can see a whole bunch of interesting ones. And here I see jobs. I'm like, okay, jobs, this is a good one. Let's look at the jobs API. That's really cool. I click on it and I see a whole bunch of APIs here that I can pick. And then I see on the right-hand side a little description about what that does. So what I want to do is I'm going to do a get on this. I'm going to use the REST API that you can see here, the REST jobs. I want to go get, meaning what I want to do is I want to go get the jobs, and I want to see the jobs that I have on my spool on that system. So what I do is I click on that jobs API and say, I want to list the jobs that I have, and I can, sort it by owner prefix or job ID. Okay, that's the easiest one. Well, I know I'm the owner. Let me go try this out with the owner. So if I scroll down a little bit within Swagger, I'll see the fields here that I can fill in information for owner or prefix or job ID, for this particular REST API. So here I just put the owner as Wally, okay? And I click down here to do a try it out. You couldn't see it in the other screen, but I just scrolled down a little bit and I said, okay, this is the API I'm going to use. I'm going to, use the owner as Wally. Click on try it out right here. And then what does it do? It says, okay, I'm going to go do and execute that REST API for you. I'm going to go pull a list of those jobs, but you got to tell me who you are, security. So I log on, I give the user ID a password, and I sign in, and then it says, okay, here you go. I'm already done. So what I will see here is the response body. This is what I want to look at within running that REST API. The response body coming back is where my program, I'm going to be doing the parsing or whatever I need to on it. Now, what else is really nice up here is it told me exactly the request URL. So if I wanted to use that somewhere, I could. And it also gave me the curl syntax here if I wanted to use that as well. So if I'm worried about getting the syntax exactly right, you can use Swagger in order to do a cut and paste. You can get the curl or the request URL exactly the way you want, and you can see the syntax and just cut and paste it into your program. So I really like Swagger. All right, so let's move even further back into zOS 2.1. And this was an APAR that we put way back on 2.1, and this was in November of 2019. Now, what we have is the ability here to remember the aliases on a CP Unix command. So when you're going to copy from a data set into the Unix file system, you might have had aliases on your members, your partition data set members. And this is the ability to accommodate those aliases and not lose them, okay? Because this is pretty important if you're going to be doing copies and the members have aliases associated with them, especially if you're going to want to take those files and put them back into a data set. You don't want to lose those aliases. And this will work on PDSs and Pdses as well. So what is the new option? The new option is -I. Okay, and that's what you're going to use, and also the -x, which means data set is executable for the aliases that happen to be program objects or load modules. So some things to note when you're going to use this copy Unix shell command with the with the alias support associated with it is, number one, you're not going to see the aliases if you do an ls in the Unix shell. You're not going to be able to see an alias. You're only going to see the base members or base files. Okay, the Pdse cannot be used in use by another user or another job. Okay, if you don't have any aliases and you do use the -i option, that's okay. It's just going to be ignored. It says you wanted to have aliases, but there weren't any. Okay, so what? I'm just going to continue on, no problem. And also the -i has to be used with the -x for the executable format. So here we are. Here's an example here. I'm looking at my product load lib. And here I can see here that I have 6 base members and 4 aliases. I have a total of 10 members, right? 6 base, 4 aliases here. And I'm going to be copying this data set from a data set, a partition data set, into the file system. So to do that, I issue the copy xi command. I'm going to take that load library that I had with 6 base members and 4 aliases, and I'm going to put them into this directory /u/mwally/product. So I did an ls on that, and you can see, as I told you, you can only see 6 members. You're only seeing the base members here. You can't see the aliases, okay? But fear not, I know that they're there. So I can do whatever I want to at this time. Now I got the files into a file system. Each member is a file underneath that directory. I can do whatever I want. I can add more to it. I don't know, whatever I want to do to that thing in this scenario. So now I eventually want to say, okay, now I want to put it back into my partition data set. So what I do here is I say copy, out of this file system directory again, and put it back into this returned load library. And I get this message, and I wanted to show you this because it was a little misleading, at least to me. It says the sequential data set cannot be copied nor moved as executable. And I was like, well, that's a little weird, right? And so the message was a little misleading, and that's why I wanted to share this with you, my experience, because what this was trying to say was that the data set was not pre-allocated. All right. So I allocated the data set, issued the command again, everything worked okay. So just be careful. I wish that message was a little bit more descriptive. So when I copied it back in, do the 4 aliases, did they come back? Yeah, you betcha, right? So I still have my 4 aliases that you can see here. So this new support with the -ix is the key to do that with aliases when you're using the copy shell command. All right, so the next thing I really liked, although I'm going to tell you honestly, we need more support for this one. But we do have something, and we have something that I think is good. So for the problem documentation upload utility, AMA PDUPL, this is the utility that you're going to use to send dumps to IBM. And you can compress those dumps, and you can section them into smaller pieces, and you can encrypt them. Okay, now the existing capability was only with FTP, and I got to tell you, not a lot of people are a fan of FTP and sending a lot of information from FTP, and so finally we were able to use the transmission method of HTTPS, which everybody is preferred. Okay, we know that from a lot of things. I know that from delivering server pack to you all, that nobody really likes the FTP option. Everybody likes the HTTPS option. So now we have HTTPS support within PDUU, okay? And it's in this APAR you can see here, OA 55959, available back in June of 2019. Okay, so a couple of things to note about using HTTPS for PDUU. One of them is it does use private virtual storage for buffering. So you're gonna have to make sure that you've got a decent work size. Okay, now speaking of work size, today they are allocated in 31-bit private storage, which really gives us a limitation to only 2 gigabytes, okay, because it is in 31-bit storage. Not our favorite restriction, but it is a known restriction today. If you try to have more than 2 gigabytes, you're going to get an error, Okay, so we do know this. It's on our list of backlog items that we will need to be getting to. So just note that about the work size, 2 GB restriction on that. Okay. If you're going to use it, you easily just say in the sysin, you say use HTTPS equals Y. That will turn it on. That's good. You'll need to have certificates to access the IBM sites in your HTTPS keyring and your HTTPS key file. There's a little document that documents what you need to do here. I would read this first, get this set up before you try to use it. The certificate work to do this, one-time kind of thing, but I think you're going to like it if you do that one-time work for it. Okay, now because the work size, is limited to 2 GB, you might have smaller work size than you would have with FTP, but still, I think people want to use HTTPS so much more than FTP that these smaller work sizes really will be hopefully acceptable to you. Okay. Now, I talked about my wish list is having a larger, work size for this thing. That's one thing that I think we can improve on. The other thing is that within zOSMF incident log, if you use the incidences that zOSMF collects, which is a great utility, a totally different topic, but that still uses FTPS today only. It's my wish list item that we could get incident log to use HTTPS also. A lot of people have shared that with us, and we want a lot of people using incident log because it's very easy to send us things through incident log. So let's see, where that goes. But those are the 2 areas that I kind of wanted to at least make known to you we don't have today. So the work size being limited to 2 gig and the incident log only using FTPS today. But with that in mind, let me show you an example of how I use that with PDUU. So here I have a dump data set that I want to send. And in my sysin, I have going to send it to test case. Target data set is here. I am going to have 3 parallel transfer sessions. That's what this is saying here. Work size is going to be 50 megabytes. That's what I happen to pick. This was not the biggest dump I could have sent. Use HTTPS equals yes. That's what I said you needed to use HTTPS. And then also note that I can indicate the case number here. This is my case number. And the APAR number for being able to specify the case on the PDUU was in a different APAR that was 54086. So once I set this all up and I submitted it, you can see that, I have 3 of these threads going. Right, 3 parallel transfer sessions happening, and I can see that they're all sent and how long it took. So the idea here is we got a little bit more to do with this, but if this is enough for you for PDUU via batch, not via the incident log, go for it. A lot of people, I think this is enough to get them happy for now. All right, so let's look at a summary of what we might want to share. I do know that we have a couple more minutes for time. I haven't looked at the chat yet. I'm going to look at that in a second. So you have stuff to put in the chat, get it ready because I'm going to go look in a second. So for items, I'm going to sort them out through ones that we want to share and the ones that are more for us. So remember for other items, user items, they might want to use that pending delete if they have Pdses that they want to force those pending deletes out of. Viewing and printing of the workflow, definitely a user item. And if you've got application programmers and they haven't figured out yet that we have Swagger support for zOSMF, get a look at that for them. Also the copy with alias support for the executables in a partitioned data set, so you don't lose the aliases, good thing. And then for us types, for the system programmer types, Gdge extended, and especially with that revisitation that we had on that very nice gold standard of how to convert Gdgs to Gdges. I'm really happy with that solution and hopefully something that you can use that on. UCATs to keep them, when you code them on auto mount, to keep that newly allocated file systems not being put in the master catalog. Really good, really easy to do. And also note that we had the ability to do continuations on different lines within that map name file as well. This is the HCS filter that we didn't have time to go over, but it's really cool. What is the ability to do is to just process certain health checker ParmLib sections of the ParmLib member on particular systems so that you can share one HCS PRM ParmLib member between many systems, makes it easier for us to manage. Syntax check, love the syntax check. A lot of complicated syntax within HCS PRM, love the syntax check. HTTPS support for PDUU today. Okay, we talked about where there were some restrictions today. And then I also just wanted to mention generic tracker. Generic tracker, another lovely component that my buddy Uli gave us. Uli was the owner of Health Checker and Generic Tracker. Two of some of my favorite components because they really help with system programmer and specifically upgrade work. But the generic tracker also is being exploited by the Gdge identification. So that's another item that I wanted to bring to your attention to make sure that you're using generic tracker. All right, so here's the summary of the things I've talked about just with one line. You know, we got the great Gdge new capability, the new batch job with only 4 steps removes all of the restrictions I think we'll be happy with. Pending deletes, you know, force those pending deletes out and that will help. That was a new option that at least I wasn't very aware of until now. Printing workflow, syntax checking, Swagger support, Pdse, PDUU, HTTPS support, and generic tracker. Now, I did want to mention, I've put all of these small enhancements presentations that I've been doing over the years since 2013 into SlideShare. So if you want to see some old stuff out there, there's a wealth of information out there. I try to rotate this information quite often so that if you see the presentation, you don't see a repeat of stuff. So there are a lot of things out there if you wanted to go put on SlideShare, and all those are out there as well. So before we get to the chat, I did want to please remember for you to do your session evaluation. This is session 2BF. Okay, do that session evaluation online. And also because GSE is a free conference, we would really strongly encourage you to make a small donation into the NHS charities. I'm sure you've seen this chart many times. And if Jeff Eggleston was on the phone, I know he would remind me to tell you that if you donate over £100, then you get a personal recognition by Mark Wilson. And what could be better by being personally recognized by Mark Nelson for being a large donator from the GSE conference to the NHS charities together. All righty. Okay, so let's get into the chat right now. I've got a couple of minutes, which is great, and I can stay a little bit longer if you guys can too. So Alan says, maybe change the title to the zOS goodie bag. Well, let me speak about that for a second, Alan. One of my very good friends and one of the mainframe's very best friends is Bob Rogers. And Bob Rogers is famous for doing a session called the zOS goodie bag. And Bob and I have been very careful that we do not step on each other's feet and that he doesn't put stuff in the goodie bag that I talk about with my small enhancements and vice versa. Also, if you know Bob, he's not very much of a Unix guy and he's not really much into zOSMF as well. And those are 2 areas that really interest me as well. So Bob will never go into the Unix and zOSMF area and his goodie bag, and I will pretty much try to get a lot of other items, but I will definitely, you know, go into the Unix and to the zOSMF area as well. So because I like Bob, he's a really good friend of mine, I will never call mine the goodie bag, only because he has the trademark on the goodie bag presentation. So that's the long story about that. He picked the best name first and he got there way before me. So John's saying nice TPS reports. Glad you noticed that, John. Whoever notices that in my session, I always have an extra tip of the hat for. And if you guys don't know what TPS reports are, well, then you'll just have to go find it out. But John and I are together on that one. I also have a Canadian friend that is into the TPS reports as well. So thanks for noticing that, John. Glad to be on the same wavelength as you. And yeah, John, I do work every weekend, which is why I put TPS reports on here. It seems I never can get caught up during the regular workday. But yes, you are right. Okay, any other questions about the little, you know, the little items, little small enhancements that we have here? You guys seem to be pretty quiet. I'm not seeing anything in the chat here. If you guys have any ideas for other small enhancements that you'd like to share, please pass them along to me. And, you know, I'd like to share them as well, because I have a couple of friends of mine that have given me ideas, and they've made it into these presentations over the years. Okay, so John asked a question. Is HTTPS a viable alternative to FTP for block SMF transfers? You know, John, I don't know the answer to that one as well. I'm going to give you my email address if you can cut and paste that, because I know when this meeting is closed, I'm going to lose the chat window. So if you could cut and paste that into an email. I'm going to go back to the title slide, which I have my email on. There you go. If you could email me that question, I can definitely know where to get the answer from on that. All right, historical goodie bag, Alan. You got to get me on that goodie bag, huh? I'm staying away from goodie bag because of my my appreciation for Bob Rogers on that. You're pretty funny, Alan. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Come on, guys. We got at least 4 more minutes until Anna's gonna chop us off here. Any more items? Any small enhancements that you might have had questions for? Let me ask you guys this. You want to put in the chat, are you already using Gdges today? Are you interested in converting them? Because this has kind of been a topic I've been on for a couple of years, and I'd like to know that I've been spending my time wisely worrying about this, because I'm thinking that people want to do conversion. Okay. So if you are wanting to do conversion, or you're just going to start off using Gdges, or if you're, you know, just like Alan and you're not even having the need for them, that's fine as well. Kind of want to get a feeling from you about that, because I worry about a lot of smaller things like that, and I want to make sure that I'm spending my time the most wisely. Okay, so we have 2 people that don't use Gdges here. Maybe one day, if you want more than 255 generations, we'll be there and we're out in front of you before you need them. We've got them there, which is well. But now that you know how to use them, it should be easy enough to define them if you ever needed more than 255. So if SCRT changes requirements, that might be a different matter. That's quite as well. Okay, so Richard's asking, would you suggest using Gdge to be future-proof? Future-proof. I'm not sure if that's a cultural reference. I'm just not getting, like, future-proof. Like, I'm sorry, Richard. I'm not sure what future-proof particularly means in that particular sentence. It means if things change in the environment, just to start using it. I'm going to take that to mean, like, should we just be using Gdges all the time, and by default? Yeah, I would say so. I would say, why not give yourself the growth space to have more generations, and then just go up to 999 generations, and just as a matter of fact, just start doing it, because you might have workload that grows, you might have new requirements that you want to look back further at generations. And so for system programmers like us, we might want to just start having more generations for our users, even if they haven't come to us for the require yet. So I would think that might be future proof, in that we could have the growth without the people even knowing that they're asking for it just yet. Okay. Good question from John. Does Mr. Catalog ever see exporting those cool F catalog display into SMF? That is an excellent idea. So John, also throw that in the email to me, and I can throw that over to Steve Branch and ask him what he's got for ideas like that. Steve and I often talk about system programmer catalog niceties, or nice items that we'd like to have. And he's actually given us quite a bit of stuff from system programmers. So when Steve and I get to talking, sometimes we do end up getting some cool stuff coming out of catalog. So definitely throw that in there, and with your name on it, it's not just me asking for it, which would be a good thing as well.
Okay, Mara, thank you so much for this presentation. Thank you to all attendees, and have a great the rest of the GSC to everyone. Thank you.
Okay, bye, thanks. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Hope to see you in person next year.